Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Automate That, the ActiveCampaign automation recipe show. If you joined us last week, welcome back. If you're just joining us for the first time this week, welcome. My name is Ernie.
I'm Cody.
And we are your hosts for this show. As we said, I'm Cody.
I'm Ernie. I'm Cody. You're Ernie.
There we go. Okay, so today, at the end of this show, you will learn how to respond appropriately by using segmentation and personalization to start a dialogue.
Yep. So today we're going to be looking at an issue of how to make sure that you are talking directly to the contact with information they've given you, and how to make sure that you're using, obviously the powerful tools of segmentation and personalization to achieve that.
Right. So let's take a look at the issue that we're going to be solving here today, as Cody just kind of mentioned. So whether you like it or not, your contacts want to believe that every email that you send to them is for them specifically. They expect you to pay attention when they interact with your business or your brand online in the various channels that you might have, whether it's email, social media, on your website, whatever the case may be. But when they're telling you something, they expect you to listen and then be able to use that information in the conversations that they have with you moving forward. If there's one thing that today's consumers hate, it's repeating themselves.
Yeah, we've all gotten used to, obviously, the big names, the Amazon, the Netflix, giving us truly personalized recommendations based on information. And this is a way to start noticing when those contacts give you that information, making sure you're storing it properly, and then able to use it in that conversation you're having right then and any conversation later on. Yeah. Also, Ernie, real quick, someone's saying they're having technical difficulties getting to the room. When something like this happens, what is usually the best way to get back into the room quickly? There's a couple of people experiencing that connection problem.
Got it. Yes, if we refresh the page or open the page again in a private window, that should take care of the issue. To that point also, this show will be recorded. You will receive a link to the recording. So I'm sorry if there are some AV difficulties out there. Refreshing the page should take care of that, but in the event that you can't get in, you will get the recording. All right. Back to the issue. As Cody was mentioning here, the big players like Amazon, like Netflix, they have seemingly unlimited resources, manpower, a treasure trove of information that they can use to send you highly segmented, highly personalized emails. So as a small business or as a medium-sized business, it's hard to feel like you can compete with them. But you don't actually have to have all of the same resources that they have. You can use automation to create some audience segments based on the information your contacts are giving you, and then send those personalized emails. So you can actually create those personalized experiences that the big players create. Because the truth is, your contacts are actually telling you quite a bit about themselves. And especially if they're filling out your forms, answering questions, it's just a matter of paying attention, storing that information in a way that makes it accessible for you, and then to use that to create a dialogue. So, without further ado, we're going to drop into the segment that we like to call the automation recipe of the week.
Are you ready? Let's go to the ActiveCampaign recipe of the week. Another ActiveCampaign recipe of the week.
So grab your accounts and your strong use case, and let's head down to the marketplace.
Another ActiveCampaign recipe of the week.
I love that music cue. Always gets me excited to go over what recipe we'll be talking about this week.
All right, without further ado, and with plenty of musical build-up here, it is the recipe reveal time. What's under the cloche, Cody? Take us through.
We have today the personal form follow-up. As you can see on the picture on the right, later on when we go through the automation, it's going to be a series of if-else actions that lead us down different personalized pathways. As we can see here on the left, this is great to use for any industry that if you're using forms to grab contacts information, this is a great thing to have. Obviously, the features are going to be forms, emails, and tags play a strong part of this too. And the use cases is marketing. You can get started without really having to understand any of the more technical, in-depth ActiveCampaign features. You get started right now, and it's for that reach and engage stage of the customer journey.
Yes, absolutely. Just a quick note here. This recipe is a great way to get started with segmentation, personalization, or even to develop your current segmentation strategies. So you're going to learn some valuable info about an individual contact when they submit this form. And that's information that you can use to help you in the future, because when you know who you're talking to, when you know what they're interested in and what they want to talk about, you've built some rapport, and you're always going to know what to say to them next. So without any more further ado, what does this recipe help us do?
Yeah, so first, we want to draw attention to, it allows you to respond in line with what the contact has told you about their interests. So whether you are a financial institution that offers services ranging from 401k to college savings, and you're wondering what service they're interested, or let's say you're a bike shop and it really matters to you if you're riding in the city or a mountain bike, because you need to know what type of make and model you're asking people to buy. Anything that you can use to differentiate an interest or a main differentiator, something you can segment and personalize on, you'll really be able to talk to them directly to that audience, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to think about like a pet services example. So, if someone is reaching out or they're interested in dog walking services, or you offer cat sitting services, or even like aquarium cleaning services, those are your three options. It wouldn't make sense for you to send someone who's interested in dog walking services an email about how you can take care of their cat, right? They don't have a cat. That is totally irrelevant to them. And this recipe is going to help you send the right message to the right person, instead of kind of just blasting everybody with the same offering, whether or not it's relevant to them.
Exactly. For instance, Ernie, you have 2 cats, right? Would you keep opening emails from something that's like, here's some treats for your dogs we know you have? Like, you definitely want to make sure you're saying the right things to the right people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, something we mentioned is it's not just this conversation. It's every conversation you have from moving out. You're slowly building the data around a contact. So the second point about tag contacts for easy reporting, segmentation, and targeted marketing. Anytime that you reach out, or anytime you need to send a one-off campaign to just a specific group, these tags that we're gaining this way, even if you don't use them for a little bit, are going to be super helpful when you realize there is this audience around this bit of information and I need to talk to them. It's a lot easier to start all that tracking early in your journey, as opposed to once you've identified it later on and want to start doing that.
Yeah, and just a note here, things change. Obviously, we all just lived through 2020. We know how quickly things can change and how many things can change. And so just because you're adding a tag to a particular contact based on their form submission at this moment in time, that's not to say that it's set in stone, right? You can, as their behaviors change, as you learn more information about them, you might find that there are different ways that you want to tag or segment them, and that is totally doable. But this one is just going to apply the tag based on their current form submission.
Yeah. And then, of course, we talked about this last week too. This is also, again, an idea of someone is submitting a form. It might be their first time talking to you. You can send that contact into targeted marketing follow-ups automatically based on their responses. Again, we'll look at that later with related recipes. You can either, use like the tag they gain for their personalization, or you can build out those actions directly into this automation with other automation steps.
Beautiful. So this automation recipe is going to allow us to do a lot, right? It's a few simple steps, but it's really powerful on the back end in terms of, learning about your contact and then creating that conversation that they want to be having as well. So it seems like there's a lot involved here, but what are the ingredients that go into this one, Cody? Yeah,
so we're looking at a form submission trigger, obviously, is how contacts are going to be getting into this automation. And then we're going to be looking at we use 3 different options for a custom field. So we have 3 different pathways. An if-else action that's going to highlight, is this the option they chose? And then they're going to go down, get that tag action, and get that email that's responsive to that.
Beautiful. Just a point of clarification, could you talk a little bit more about what an if-else action is?
Yeah, so an if-else action is a yes-no statement that then will send contacts, depending on if they meet the conditions, down the yes path if they do, or the no path if they don't. You can do something as simple as, did they open an email? Or in this case, is this the option they selected? Or something as complex as, did they open this email? Is it January? is it the 10th because I have a sale going on and I really want to make sure I send them a pressing email. So our if-else steps can be as simple or as complex as you want.
Awesome. All right. So let's take a look at what we would want to have set up before we import this recipe. I like to call this the mise en place slide. If you are familiar with cooking or baking, you might want to pre-measure those ingredients to make sure everything is on hand, where you need it, when you need it, so you're not scrambling. What are we going to want to have created before this recipe?
For sure. So first up, like last week, you're going to want to build the form in your account. Again, it's absolutely fine if it's not live yet, but you're just going to want to make sure you have that form built out so you can select it when going through the import wizard. As you're building that form, this second step is going to really come into play. You're going to determine which bit of information that you're wanting to capture to use to segment, because we are going to be, that third point, building out a custom field with options that you're using to segment. And we got some helpful links on this page for if you're new to forms, new to custom fields. These go to our help docs to help explain them further. But yeah, because we're going to, on that form, someone's going to tell you something, and then depending on which option they choose, we're going to say something. These are the three things that are great to have before you even import it into your account.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to have somewhere for that information to go as soon as they submit it. So let's take a look at the journey of the recipe. Cody, what am I looking at here? This is kind of confusing.
Yeah, so as we talked about, this has a lot of pathways. So we wanted to start with a zoomed out approach. We're definitely going to zoom into a couple of places here, but we wanted you to be able to have an idea of what the whole thing looks like from the beginning. As you can see, we have our trigger at the very top, and then we have 3 if-elses with unique in content, but the similar action logic under each yes path. So when we zoom in, we're going to be looking at specific ones, but know that it's true for each of the pathways.
Yeah, it just looks like it's 3 of the same thing kind of stacked on top of each other here. So let's take a look at that a little closer.
Yeah, so we'll zoom in here. You can see that the trigger is contact submits the form. We've went with the very generic name of selection form, just so that you could see that anything could be done with it. All right. Yes, I'm seeing in the chat, some people are saying that they didn't get last week's recording. I just want to address that real quick too. Me and Ernie will look into that and make sure that we give you you'll get that recording with a link to the last week's handouts as well.
And one addition there, if you go to the Automate That landing page that you signed up for, we will be including a blog recap as well as the recording and the slides on that landing page for all episodes that we have done. And also to that point, check your promotions or your spam folder. Sometimes the emails do land in there. We have that issue as well as everyone else does. So be sure to check there, but also the landing page should have all that stuff for you moving forward.
Of course. So sorry, I'll reset real quick. So when the trigger happens, obviously that's how they enter. And then you'll notice that when we have these if-else steps, we're just asking selection field, which is a field on our selection form, is option 1. The second one is option 2. That third one, which is not pictured, obviously is option 3. We just use 3 as an example number. It could be as few as 2. It could be as many as 12. You can keep building out depending on the different selections someone would make with you.
Yeah, just wanted to make a point here that this particular automation recipe is good for if someone is selecting one of a drop-down menu or one option rather than multiple options. But Cody, if we were to have a form where you could select more than one option or more than one interest, how would that change the way this recipe looks?
Yeah, so perfect. We actually do have a separate recipe that's great for just tagging based on custom fields. So we're not trying to communicate with them at the very end of this automation, as you'll see on the next slide. So the biggest difference is that selection field, it wouldn't be selection field is option 1 in that condition in the if-else. It would be selection field contains option 1. You'd also need to make sure you're using a field type like radio buttons that allows you to choose more than one option. And then, Ernie, if you actually go to the next slide, we'll show here real quick too. As we'll go over in just a second, we tag and then we send email and then we end. If you're using one of those where you just want to tag based on what all the selections they've made, instead of that email and end, you just want to go to action that automatically takes them to the next if-else. You want to make sure that they have a chance to say yes to each question if that is what it is. But for this automation, as you can see, this is if they've selected option 2, it looks very similar for option 1 and option 3. We're going to tag them for that option. And then we're going to send an email for contacts who have chosen that option. So we definitely recommend using personalization tags to personalize even farther, first name, other bits of information you can give them. But even the boilerplate text of this email is going to be specifically for people who chose that. So you're personalizing on even that further level too.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got this recipe in here. This opens the door to begin segmenting, to begin personalizing those emails moving forward, making sure that we are talking to our contacts about what they're interested in. But what does this recipe allow us to do? What other doors does this open for us?
Sure. So we have a nurture series based on when someone is tagged with an option. Our actual example is option 1 is added. So it ties nicely into this. What that's going to do is send a series of emails over a course of a couple of days. Then at the end, we actually do a unique engagement with that nurture series to make sure you're talking the same content they want to hear, which is it'll go through a series of if-elses. If they read every email you've sent, they're going to be tagged nurture series, highly engaged. They read some, but not all, they'll get nurture series engaged. And if for some reason they didn't read any of the emails, it'll say nurture series unengaged. And that'll also be assigned to you that while they selected something, maybe they're not looking to buy right now. Maybe they were shopping for a friend. Maybe this information you have is more about them and someone else. It at least lets you know there's a reason they're not engaging. And so you can at least start looking into what that is.
Yeah, I do love the end of that automation, just because, things change, situations change. It might not have been the right time. They might have been very interested at that moment and then sort of taken some time to think about it. But it really just helps you to know exactly where that contact is at that point in time. If they've signed up, they're in your nurture series, you know that there is at least some level of interest, but it's really going to help you determine what to send, the tone that you're going to send, the frequency that you're going to send, all by knowing how engaged they are with that nurture series.
Yeah. And then if you're about making that sell, if this process is about converting to close, then that's what the second automation is. It's another series of emails, but it is specifically focused on making the sell. And once a purchase has been made, a goal at the end of this one takes them out of the automation so we don't keep sending them sales emails once they've made that purchase. So kind of the top two are two different things. Nurture series is really for marketing, a series of emails you want to make sure they read all of them. Whereas targeted product interest follow-up, that's going to be more for making that sell. And once they've made that sell, you'll start having different conversations, but won't keep telling them about the same product.
Yes, and that is such an important point. If you're using advertising and someone buys the product, one, it's going to save you money because you don't have to advertise to that person anymore. But also, they don't want to continue seeing an ad for a product that they already bought, or seeing emails from you about a product that they already bought. So it really, again, ensures that you're listening to what they're telling you, whether it's them taking an action or even an inaction, as we saw in the nurture series. If they're not looking at your emails, that's an action too, and that's something that's worth listening to, and you're going to be able to respond appropriately using these two automations. Yeah,
and then of course the last recipe we got here, create deal from a form. If you're still are using the deal CRM and ActiveCampaign, it's a powerful tool. This automation, unlike last week where we did add a deal, this one did not. The create a deal from a form, a great system to run at the same time. If you're running this, it actively, once someone submits a form, it actually checks if they have a deal or not already. If they do, it just notifies the deal owner about the new information on the deal. If they don't, then it will go ahead and create the deal, create a task, and notify that deal owner for you as well.
Perfect. You'll always know who's submitting those forms, and so long to the days of letting those leads fall through the cracks. Let's open it up here and see what kind of questions we've got.
Awesome. That sounds
good.
Take
a look at the chat.
All right.
We've got Therese looks like she is looking for a first automation. We've got quite a few different options as we have in the marketplace, over 500 automation recipes. But one thing that I would suggest doing is taking a look at your customer journey. What are the repeatable steps that every contact who goes from a lead to a customer is going to have to take? Take a look at those steps and then break them into bite-sized pieces. What is the next step that they would take, and then kind of take a look at how you would automate that. That's going to establish a more modular approach for you, so that if an automation does break down in the future, you at least know exactly where it happened and you can fix it easily. But it's also going to kind of help you prioritize your touch points, the different actions that you want to take. And those things that every contact has to go through, all of those steps, those are the things that you would automate first. That's going to save you time, and it's going to save you hopefully money in the future.
Yeah. I'm seeing another question too about, can a user tick all 3 options and will they be receiving 3 emails in a row? With this automation recipe, we encourage you to use a drop-down form field type, or one of the form fields where someone is choosing a specific option and only one, so they only receive 1 message and get that 1 tag. If you are making a selection that multiple people could say something, like for instance, we talked about the financial services example, someone could be interested in 401k planning and also saving for their kids for their college fund, then we'd actually encourage you check out the apply tags based on custom fields recipe in the marketplace. That's actually going to already have that logic built out. And when someone submits your form, no emails are going to go out. You can handle that in another automation, but it's going to check for each option. And that's using a form field like radio buttons where someone can select more than one.
Cody, I love that you have all of these recipes in your head as if it's like some sort of encyclopedia up there. It's fantastic. Seeing a couple questions here that are sort of related. How does a customer choose an option? And then can you do this with already existing customers? So a customer would choose an option based on the form that you would create. So we did have a link in here in the slides. So if you click that, that'll be to a help document from ActiveCampaign that'll show you how to create a form and then the different ways that the different fields that you can create on that form for your audience to submit answers. And then Kelly asks if you could do this with already existing customers. Absolutely. You could do this with anybody who you can get the form in front of. They could be a longstanding customer or someone who's interacting with your business for the first time.
And while forms typically do live on your website, especially with pre-existing customers, you can always embed a link to a form in a campaign and let them know it's because you want to start offering things directly to them. A lot of contacts will take you up on that, knowing that you're going to start talking more personally to them. So that's a great way to make sure that you get it in front of your already existing list instead of just having it on like the homepage of your website as well.
It's a great call. There's also now with ActiveCampaign, our pages feature. So if you are looking for standalone web pages or landing pages that you can actually embed a form on, it doesn't necessarily have to be on your website. It can be a totally unique URL. So be sure to check out the ActiveCampaign pages feature that is available on our Plus plans and above.
Yeah. I do see Nicole's next question is it possible to run selected contacts through an automation manually? Yes. For example, you mentioned that you ran that affects new contacts. Perhaps 50% of the existing contacts were never part of it, thus didn't get tagged. There's actually, you can run a search in your contact section for has not entered that automation. Everyone who hasn't will surface. If there are other things, other people you want to exclude, you can just add those other conditions in that search too. But then once all those contacts are there, you can click I believe the button says edit all, but it will be right there. It'll edit all the contacts that the search has returned, and you can manually add them to your automation so that it does tag them as well.
Looks like we've got a question about recipes suitable for an art gallery or artists. We do have the ability to filter by industry in the marketplace. So you can filter by use case, experience level, industry, features, all sorts of different things in the marketplace. So Cody, do we have an industry that is close to that?
Yeah, I would say our events entertainment industry is probably going to cover art galleries, museums, theaters, those types of workflows. I think we speak a lot to probably venues and musicians in those, but the same things can be easily tweaked and applied and work for any sort of business for those use cases. Yeah.
Awesome. Looks like we've got a question here about, can we show what the prospect/customer sees on their end through the automation based on their choices? In the automation builder, where the send email action is, you can actually click into that, and that would be where you would select the email that you would want to send. So in the recipe, Cody, do we have some sort of placeholder email? But that would be where you would then enter your email based on the specific selection that your contact had made on the form.
This brings up a great point. There isn't necessarily a preview tool for like, if I select this, what will this give me? Because there isn't a way to have that kind of example contact. But the best workaround is to just create yourself as an example contact, send your own email through, make sure that the flow is working correctly. You can always skip wait steps. If you don't know this, go into your contact record, click on the automation name that you are currently in, you want to skip a wait step for, go into it, you'll see a pathway. If you're at a wait step, you'll see just a little text that says skip this wait step. That way you don't have to wait the actual day before keep testing out your logic and things like that.
And
Oh, so sorry, Ernie.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do also see, Joshua, I didn't want to miss this question. What would be the major differences between sending separate emails besides showing certain content in an email based on what they selected? That actually is a great call out, Josh. We do have conditional content so that if you're sending out an email one-off blast in the campaign section, or even just have every contact going through the same nurture series, but want to make sure you're servicing it to the right people, you can definitely do that. You want to make sure that your conditions are set correctly. Otherwise, you want to make sure someone doesn't get a blank email or someone gets a block not meant for them. But yes, you can also do that. What that is, for those who don't know what conditional content is, we can always drop another link here in a second. But that is taking any block, image or text or any sort of block and saying, this should only appear to people who meet this condition or do not meet this condition. And you can that way have a lot of different emails and a lot of different information all stored within one email so that they only get the appropriate one for them.
Yes, Cody, you made one point there that I wanted to kind of circle back to, and that was you can always test the automation with your own email address. I would actually recommend doing this for most email automations that you do. You're going to want to see how it looks. You're going to want to make sure to read it, to QA that process, and then just make sure that the automation works the way that you want it to. So definitely use your own contact, test all of your automations so that you don't have to learn the lesson the hard way on an actual contact in a real world situation. Lindsay, I see your question here about landing pages. I'm dropping a link to our landing page launch webinar that we hosted when pages came out. That's going to give you a detailed walkthrough of how landing pages works and all the different things that you can do with it. And then can you see any record of this stream? Yes, this episode will be recorded. You'll receive a link to that. And then this will also be hosted on the Automate That landing page as well.
Yeah. And then is there any automation that works similar to this, but instead of form, it's based on surveying the responses? Yeah, yes. Anytime that you're doing, if you want to build out a series of tagging based on this, what I would say to do is we don't have a recipe right now that's already pre-built, but you can use this as a template. Once you've gotten that first field handled, you can move actually instead of into other automation, move all the contacts to go to other step and move them to another series of if else, or build in that other automation for those other tags. And we say form, but truly this can be, feel free to adjust the trigger. It can be for any integration you have with like Typeform, Jotform, any of those great form tools that plug into ActiveCampaign. You'll just want to make sure you adjust that trigger.
And then it looks like we've got one final question here from Caesar. When you invite in a form to subscribe a webinar, how do you synchronize the participants who confirm the participation with Demio or other tools in order to control access? So that is probably going to be done through the integration with Demio. If you're not seeing that, there's also the opportunity to use the API. Our success team here at ActiveCampaign would certainly be able to help you out with some more specific examples or building out a more customized automation for your exact use case. We can drop a link to our success team's one-on-one schedule here in the chat for you.
Awesome. And then I see one last question. Also, is it possible to determine how many automation-related emails a single contact has received within a certain amount of time? And if you have a variety of automations, can you ensure that someone doesn't receive multiple emails a day? Yes. So in the contact stream, activity stream, when you go to a contact, that's probably the best time to see when they've received what emails when. That's going to be your best tool for that, going to check a specific contact. As far as if you're running a variety of automations and people have kind of taken actions to enter all of them, that's where you might want to start building in some logic so that you hold them at like a wait step at the top of another one saying like, wait until this automation has ended or is no longer in this other automation. There isn't a way just to say only allow for just one automation, but there are some workarounds within automation to make sure. Another one we see a lot is that people will use, a tag like pause messaging. That way, if someone's in an automation, you don't want them to receive your day-to-day messages while they're receiving that specific drip information. You can put do not send to people with that tag in your campaign section for each of those campaigns. and then make sure they keep in that.
Oh, Bert, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We are glad that you are finding some value here. Thank you as well to Lindsay. That looks like it's going to do it for us this week. We will see you at the same time in the same place for next week's episode of Automate That. Have a great rest of your day to the 65% of us that are on the west side of the Atlantic Ocean and to the 35% of you across the pond. Have a great evening. We will see you next week. And that is that.
Automated. Have a great one, guys.
Bye, everybody. Hi, thank you for watching. If you are enjoying Growth Decoded, you can find a link in the description to sign up and join the Grow team. You'll get exclusive content and opportunities that have to do with the show. You can also hit the subscribe button for ActiveCampaign's YouTube channel somewhere down here, and you will never miss an update from us.